Happy Halloween, guys. Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I will be setting up my fantasy cruncher for today's showdown slate between the Cincinnati Bengals and Cleveland Browns. This is for the largest field GPP on DraftKings. Some of the steps I take here I would not be taking if I were playing a small field GPP, or if I were playing a cash game, for example. I probably wouldn't be making a lot of these changes to my settings, but this is how I'm going to set it up for the largest field GPP on DraftKings. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my columns look the way I want them to. I have a quick view saved. I think they might already be. Okay. So I can see what I want to see in the middle of my screen, my projection, ownership projections, how much I'm getting of different players after I run a crunch, et cetera, et cetera. On this slate, like most slates, I'm going to go into the captain tab, and I'm going to set a max exposure on any given captain at 20%. I think that there are a number of interesting captain plays on this slate, so I'm going to spread it out. I'm not going to have 100% of any player in the captain spot. All right, then I'm going to go into advanced options, which is where I do most of my work. And I'm just going to be using two tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting here in the general tab, unique players per lineup. I'm playing 150 lineups. I'm going to leave this at one unique player per lineup. That means my lineups can be one player different from each other. If you're playing 20 or fewer lineups, I might suggest changing this to two unique players per lineup to have a little bit more differentiation within your lineup set. Team salary, I set a maximum salary here for the purpose of getting different. I don't want to use the full $50,000 salary, because when you do that, you're a lot more likely to run into a lot of duplicates. A lot of people want to use the full salary, and then you end up, with 100 people with the same lineup as you. And even if you get lucky enough to win, you're going to be duplicated so many times, you're not going to win a lot of money. So I like to leave a little bit of salary on the table. Let's say we'll leave $1,000 on the table. So we're only going to use 49,000 salary instead of using the full salary cap here. Offensive players versus defense. The default is set to max of 2 players. I'm going to change this to 5. So theoretically, I could have a lineup that has 5 Cincinnati Bengals players on one side, and then just the Browns defense being the only player that I get from the Browns. I don't mind that at all. It's a unique construction. Not a lot of people are going to do that, and I think it could work out. This is a game where it could work out in particular, because the Bengals could really just crush the Browns here. It is in Cleveland, maybe a little bit less likely, but the Browns defense can certainly get to Joe Burrow. He's been sacked the third most times of any quarterback this year. He also has thrown, I believe, 5 interceptions so far this year. So there's ways for the Browns defense to score a lot of points, and maybe the offense sputters, and then the Bengals offense does well. So I think that 5 players against your defense is something that I will allow. Probably won't see it a lot in my lineups, but if I see it a few times, I don't mind that one bit. Global exposure cap, I'm leaving at 100%. As you saw, I changed my captains to 20%, but if I get, far north of that for players in the flex spot, I don't mind that. Some players just project well enough that it makes some sense. Randomness, I'm going to change to 50%. If you want more control over your lineups, I would use a lower randomness, or maybe even zero randomness. I know some people use zero randomness and they want to have complete control over their lineups. I give up some of that control by having higher randomness. I'm also using normal distribution randomness, where it makes a little bit more sense to have higher randomness here. If you are using the classic randomness, maybe 30% or so might be my recommendation. But again, it comes down to how much control you want over your lineups versus letting Fantasy Cruncher make some weird constructions for you. Minimum projection included in calculation currently set to 3 fantasy points. So any player who scores fewer than 3 fantasy points, who projects for fewer than 3 fantasy points, will not be included in your player pool. I'm going to leave this at 3. And if there are players who are projected for fewer than 3 fantasy points who I want to be in my player pool, I'm just going to manually boost their projection to make sure they're in my player pool. All right, that's everything that I do. And then, players from each team max, I leave at 5. So again, I could have 5 players from one team, just 1 from the other. All right, and then I'll move to the groups tab. Guys, BetMGM has a no-brainer NBA offer for you that you can access by clicking the link in the description of this video. Once you're on the site, simply put $10 on any pregame moneyline bet, any game. And if either team hits a 3-pointer, you'll get $200 in free bets. This offer is available in all states except New York, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi, and all Canadian provinces except Ontario. You've got to take advantage of these no-brainer offers when they come up. Again, just click the link in the description of this video to access the offer. And the most important groups revolve around quarterbacks. I'm going to make a Joe Burrow captain group to start. So I'm Joe Burrow in the captain spot, I'm going to make my key player. So this entire group is just about lineups that have Joe Burrow in the captain spot. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to add every Bengals pass catcher to a secondary group. Tyler Boyd, Trent Taylor, Mike Thomas, T. Higgins, Hayden Hurst, Mitchell Wilcox, Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon. All right, so I've added every Bengals, I guess Chris Evans. I've added every Bengals pass catcher with a projection to my secondary group. Joe Burrow has shown a little bit more rushing upside this year than he has in the past. He's already rushed for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. So, never been a great rusher, but he is an adequate rusher. And again, rushing a little bit more so far this year. So I think that he has the upside to potentially be the optimal captain with just one pass catcher in the flex. So I'm not going to force more than one. I'm going to leave this as it is. So if Joe Burrow's in the captain spot, at least one player from this group. I'm not going to change it to 2 for Joe Burrow just because he has shown at least a little bit of rushing upside. He could rush for 30 yards and a touchdown and potentially be the optimal captain without multiple pass catchers getting there. But I'm also not going to only apply a plus minus. I'm going to require at least one pass catcher with Joe Burrow because he's not like a Lamar Jackson level rusher. But to make it more likely, so I'm allowing for just one to be in flex spots with Joe Burrow and the captain. I'm also going to give projections boosts to these guys in lineups that have Joe Burrow in the captain spot to make it more likely that I get to these players. I think Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins project so well relative to their value, to their salary, that I'm not going to give them much boost. These other guys, actually Mike Thomas, you could probably put in that bucket as well. So I'm just going to give smaller boosts to those guys just because the projections are already so good point per dollar, and I don't want to get them in every single Joe Burrow lineup that I make. So I'm going to give the bigger boost to the other guys in the lineup and not give those guys quite such big boosts. And then running backs, I typically don't give huge boosts to either. I think that is good enough for me. For my Joe Burrow captain group, I will name this one captain. All right, I'm going to create a new group, and this will be my Jacoby Brissett in the captain spot. Make him my key player, Jacoby Brissett in the captain spot, my key player. And now I'm going to do the same thing and add all of these Browns pass catchers. I guess I'll include the running backs. Don't know that necessarily need to include Nick Chubb. He's not much of a pass catcher. All right. Jacoby Brissett is actually same thing. He's rushed for 130 yards so far this year, which is better than, more rushing than he has done in the past. Very similar to Joe Burrow. I think he's only rushed for 1 touchdown, but that's just kind of variance. So I think he also has the upside, and he's a little bit cheaper. He could make it in as the optimal captain without bringing in multiple pass catchers. I think I'm still going to require at least one pass catcher. So I'm again going to leave this as is. If I have Jacoby Brissett in the captain spot, at least one pass catcher in the flex spot. But I'm also going to give boost to these other guys because most likely if Jacoby Brissett scores enough fantasy points to be the optimal captain, he's going to be spreading the ball around, and multiple pass catchers will also get there. And none of these guys project as well point per dollar. So I don't have the same concerns with as I had with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, where if I give them a boost, they're just going to get into every single Jacoby Brissett captain lineup. I think I can give full boost to all these pass catchers. Kareem Hunt. Hard to know what to do with Kareem Hunt tonight. There are trade rumors going on with Kareem Hunt. Who knows if he's going to get a full workload. He has not been very involved the past few weeks. All right, I'm going to leave it just like that. And I'm going to make the same group with these quarterbacks. Flex spot. So I'm going to go down, find Joe Burrow at quarterback, make him a key player. And again, add every single Bengals pass catcher to the secondary group. We've got no Jamar Chase tonight. So it's a little bit of an interesting situation for the Bengals. New receivers stepping up. Kind of unclear who's going to be playing what role, how involved some of these secondary and tertiary pass catching options are going to be. But we are going to make of it what we can. Okay, and for this group, I am I think I am going to require at least one pass catcher. You don't necessarily need to because of the rushing upside. I think it's a little bit more likely that Joe Burrow could be optimal in a flex spot and not bring any pass catcher along with him. If he does have the upside for a rushing touchdown, doesn't necessarily need to bring somebody along with him. But with this salary, I think he needs to still put up a pretty decent score to be in the optimal. And if he does, he's probably going to be bringing at least one pass catcher along with him. So I think I am just going to require at least one pass catcher in lineups that have Joe Burrow in the flex spot. But I'm also not going to give any boost to any pass catcher. I'm just going to say at least one of these guys in a lineup with Joe Burrow in the flex spot. And then same thing, Jacoby Brissett in the flex spot. You can tell I don't usually wear cowboy hats. I keep bumping into this microphone stand, knocking it all over. All right. Now I'm going to add all of my Browns pass catchers into the secondary group. Seemed like a good costume choice. I wasn't going to throw off my game. Couldn't wear a mask with these glasses. I tried. Didn't work out. Was going to wear a wig like I did for my Halloween costume on Saturday. The hair got all up in my mouth. I hated it. So I thought this hat would be a good idea, but with the microphone stand, maybe not as good as I thought. And I am going to also, because I have him in the flex spot, I can add these Cleveland pass catchers in the captain spot to the secondary group. Okay, and same thing. I'm not going to give any boost to anybody. I'm just going to say if you've got Jacoby Brissett in the flex spot, you should have at least one pass catcher with him. Yeah, I think I'm good with this group. I almost want to exclude Nick Chubb from this group just because I think he's the one who's most likely to get in there a lot of the time, and he's also not much of a pass catcher. I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to exclude Nick Chubb from this group. He could theoretically score a touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and maybe this is a mistake to require somebody else, but he's just so uninvolved, and I think that I'm just going to run into so many lineups that are Jacoby Brissett with just Nick Chubb if I leave it, just because the projection is so good. I'm just going to remove him from the group. All right, good enough. I'm going to save this. And now I'm just going to crunch 150 lineups. All right, and this is what comes out naturally just given those settings that I have set. You can see I've got T. Higgins in the caps. A lot of Bengals onslaught lineups here. I'm probably not getting to, it looks like I'm getting to 21% Jacoby Brissett. Maybe that's what you really want. It is pretty likely that the Bengals, just rout the Browns here tonight, but at the same time, it's only a 3.5 point spread. So I don't think I want only Bengals onslaughts. I'd like maybe I'll want some Browns onslaughts in my lineups at times. So I'll be making some adjustments, but from just a construction standpoint, looking at the correlations, again, the most important thing is quarterbacks. I see Joe Burrow here with so here's a group I could say. I've got T. Higgins in the captain spot, and then I've got, I guess, just two real primary pass catchers in the flex. So that is fine. Sometimes I would set a group that says if you have any Bengals receiver in the captain spot, at most one receiver elsewhere in the lineup in the flex spot. Because if T. Higgins is scoring enough fantasy points to be the optimal captain, it's a little bit tougher for multiple other pass catchers to get there, just because that means that a lot of the concentration is going to T. Higgins. But then again, with these price tags, with Mike Thomas being at 1,200, he doesn't really need to do a lot to take away from T. Higgins's points a lot, just based on that price tag. Tyler Boyd at 6,400, again, not a huge price tag, so I don't think it's as necessary in this group. There are other days where I might set that group, not necessarily here. Joe Burrow in the captain spot, you can see three main pass catchers plus Joe Mixon. Jacoby Brissett with just one pass catcher in the flex spot. Maybe I need to give bigger boosts to these Browns pass catchers, just because they don't project nearly as well point per dollar in general as the Bengals pass catchers. That might be something I need to consider, giving bigger boosts even than that 12% that I've given, just because, again, the projections just aren't quite there to keep up with the Bengals receivers with no Jamar Chase in. But maybe that's okay. Maybe you just want to stick with what the projections tell you. Again, here's Jacoby Brissett, just one pass catcher in the flex. I could also just go back and require two with Jacoby Brissett in the captain spot. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to, maybe I'll go back. Yeah, again, a third one. I'm just going to go back to my advanced options. Guys, BetMGM has a no-brainer NBA offer for you that you can access by clicking the link in the description of this video. Once you're on the site, simply put $10 on any pregame moneyline bet, any game. And if either team hits a three-pointer, you'll get $200 in free bets. This offer is available in all states except New York, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi, and all Canadian provinces except Ontario. You've got to take advantage of these no-brainer offers when they come up. Again, just click the link in the description of this video to access the offer. Change the Brissett captain group, give these guys a little bit bigger boosts. Just incrementally, I'm not going to give huge boosts here, just slightly better to make it a little bit more likely that they make it into those lineups, that I get multiple pass catchers with Jacoby Brissett in the captain spot. But I also need to look at my exposures. So I look and I make sure the correlations look good. So far, I would say the correlations look good. I don't see too many that are, things that I don't want to be seeing a lot of. Do I want more Jacoby Brissett? I don't know, something to think about. It looks like I'm getting 71% of Joe Burrow in the flex, and then another 20%. So he's in 90% of my lineups. I don't know if I want that. Maybe I would adjust his projection a little bit. Running back, you can see I'm getting 24% Nick Chubb, 43% Joe Mixon, 19% Kareem Hunt. Not getting to any Samaje Perine. I think I would like to get to some Samaje Perine, just that he's only 8.2% projected ownership. He's only 4,800. He's pretty involved in the passing game. I could see Samaje Perine scoring a receiving touchdown, and wouldn't take a ton to pull off this 4,800 price tag to pay that off. So maybe I want to give Samaje Perine some thumbs up here. Try to get him some lineups. I'm debating about Dearness Johnson, what I want to do if I want to have him in my lineups, assuming that he is active, which I think he will be. Just because of the Kareem Hunt trade rumors, we don't really know how that's going to affect things, if at all. Maybe he has his usual role. Kareem Hunt has not been especially involved. He's only had 9 carries over the past 2 weeks combined, after the first 5 weeks of the season having 10 or more every week. So he has not been very involved. But I'm thinking about, if Kareem Hunt is on the trading block, maybe the Browns have him active but don't use him. It's also possible that they want to showcase him, but he's been around so long that I don't think that's as necessary. With a veteran like Kareem Hunt, teams kind of know who he is. So I think it would be more likely, if there's any effect, that he just plays a little bit less or not at all, and then Dearness Johnson maybe becomes the RB2. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but if he's coming in at 0.4% ownership, maybe I'll make the bet that would happen 5% of the time and try to get to a little bit of Dearness Johnson. Chris Evans, I don't know if I'm going to have Chris Evans in my player pool. I'd rather get to Dearness Johnson just because of the narrative. But not feeling strongly one way or another currently. Maybe that's a stand I'll take, though, just because of the extremely low ownership. All right, a wide receiver, T. Higgins, as expected, I'm getting a ton of T. Higgins. He looks like he's currently in 98% of my lineups in either the flex or the captain spot. I don't think that I'm going to want him in 98% of my lineups just because this is the NFL. Weird things happen. He could get hurt. He could just not have the game. They could, score early and often, but it just goes to other receivers. So I definitely don't want 98% T. Higgins. I shouldn't say definitely. I don't think it would be a mistake if you just wanted to buy in, say the projection is just so good. I don't think that's what I'm going to do. It's not usually an approach that I take with a player this expensive, where he does actually have to do something to pay it off. Amari Cooper getting 40% looks good. Tyler Boyd stepping into that wide receiver 2 role with Jamar Chase out, but I don't know that I want 59% plus. Am I getting to Tyler Boyd in the captain spot? Yeah, 16%. I mean, that still leaves me plenty of outs, even if he doesn't do anything. So maybe I'm okay with it. Donovan Peoples-Jones getting a little bit above the field. I like to see that. David Bell coming in at under 10% ownership. He's kind of interesting, talented rookie. Maybe I'll try to get a little bit more David Bell just because of the price tag and the ownership. Wouldn't take that much for him to pay this off. So maybe I want a little bit more there. Mike Thomas seems we're expecting him to step into that wide receiver 3 role for the Bengals. He's only 1,200. Yeah, I'm getting to 34%. He's coming in under 20% owned. So I think he could certainly pay that off. So I like that ownership there. And then Trent Taylor, it's possible that he gets a little bit more of that workload instead of Mike Thomas. It's more likely to be Thomas, but I still think that I want to be above this 6% number on Trent Taylor. So maybe I'll give him a couple thumbs up there. And it looks like that is everybody I need to be thinking about at wide receiver. Tight end, we've got Hayden Hurst. Also could be taking on more of a role with Jamar Chase out. So getting to 31%. I don't mind that at all. Harrison Bryant, I think I'd like to get more than this. 10.7% usage right now in my 10.7% in my lineups. He's only coming in at 17% owned, and he is presumably the tight end 1 for the Browns this week. He's only 4,000. We've got David Njoku out. So I think Harrison Bryant steps up. Could see a really significant role increase. So I think I'm going to give him a couple thumbs up. Maybe Mitchell Wilcox. I'll just give him a little boost to get him into my player pool. Boost. Pharaoh Brown. Don't know much about Pharaoh Brown. But I guess now he would be the number 2 tight end. It's between him and Miller Forrestall. No strong takes here as far as Pharaoh Brown versus Miller Forrestall. But looks like I'm going to get a little bit of Pharaoh Brown. Maybe maybe I want to give him a little projection boost. Maybe get Miller Forrestall into my player pool. Not getting to a lot of kickers. I think that I'd like to get more of these kickers than I am currently. I'm just going to give them thumbs ups. And defenses, I think I'd like to get, the field isn't getting there a ton. I think these defenses are solid enough plays. I think each quarterback has thrown 5 interceptions so far this year. Joe Burrow, again, gets sacked all the time. And then, the Jacoby Brissett has not been sacked a ton this year, but he is facing a tougher defense in the Bengals. I think that I would rather get more of these defenses. And if you've watched these videos before, I'm not going to do my entire process here. I'm just kind of trying to show you the way I think about these slates. Yeah, so these boosts, I get a little bit more of the defenses. Still not getting into any Cade York. Maybe I'd give him a little boost. Still not getting into any Mitchell Wilcox. Maybe I need to give the thumbs up there. But this is just my general process. Now I'm going to go through and I'll do several crunches. If you saw here, I yesterday ran so many crunches just on Showdown slates. I had more than 40 crunches on Showdown slates. It really does take me a while. I go bit by bit, making incremental changes to projections. I usually don't actually use these thumbs up. This is what I recommend to people who haven't really used Fantasy Cruncher much because the projections are very good. That's a big part of, I keep the projections, the base projections in mind as I'm making changes to those projections. I'm still thinking about how are they relative to each other, to the way they were when we started, because these projections are better than anything that I could do. So usually I would recommend using those thumbs up if you're not extremely experienced, making changes incrementally to the actual projections. But that's what I do. I just go through looking position by position and deciding, do I want a little bit more of this guy? Do I want a little bit more of that guy? What do I want? How much exposure do I want to each player at each position? And do the lineups correlate the way I want them to? And currently, I think they're looking pretty good. I'm still going to be tinkering throughout the day. I will be making adjustments. And of course, after inactives come out, sometimes things can change pretty drastically. But this is my general process. I just want to make sure my lineups correlate well and I get to exposure levels on each player that I like. That'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you can find some success using this or a similar process tonight.